All right, guys, what is up? Chris Sagone here, half of the Mixed Bag Podcast. If you haven't already, head on over to the Instagram page that Trevor has started. Give us a follow and check out all the stuff that we've got posted. Share that stuff with your friends. We got a lot more stuff coming. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. Trevor is in North Carolina. He'll be here in a couple of weeks, and we plan on shooting some stuff in person with both of us in the same place. But today, it's just me. And I want to talk about some of the rules changes. You know, the rules changes for 2026 just got posted, and I haven't seen a lot of chatter about it, which is kind of surprising because if I'm just being honest, there's some pretty big rules changes. Obviously, there's the time change. There's the whole issue with what used to be 30 seconds to get a time violation has now been moved to 45 seconds. And the way that the violations are implemented has somewhat changed with warnings and things like that. But the real rule change that I noticed that I haven't heard anybody talking about is the group decision rule, which I think is probably better suited as being called the benefit to the player rule. We've all, if you've played competitively at pretty much any level, you're pretty familiar with the benefit to the player rule. Usually what ends up happening is, you're in a tournament setting, there's a card of 4 people. Player in question makes a throw. It's hard to determine whether he was inbounds here or there, whether he's out of bounds at all, whatever. And the group can't come to a decision. And then ultimately the response is generally benefit to the player, right? So there's a couple of things that have been talked about, changed in relation to the benefit to the player, or benefit of the doubt, I think is the exact wording that's used with the PDGA rules. I'm going to try to put up some little blurbs and stuff of the exact rulings. But the main thing that you'll notice is they say that the terminology benefit of the doubt or benefit of the player does not exist in the rule book anywhere. That is not a real thing. So the emphasis then goes to how do we come to a decision, right? Because that ultimately gets rid of the need for benefit to the player. So in the past, people have argued, I've heard both sides of it. I've heard people argue that everyone on the card, including the player in question, has a vote on whether something is in or out. And that is not true. The player in question does not have a vote. So on a card of 4 people, there are only 3 votes. And those are the other card mates that you have that are not the person that has the ruling in question. So that's a big thing to point out, because that has kind of been a point of contention in the past where, it could be 2 people say yes, 2 people say no. There's a dead split, benefit to the player. That's one way that they take that away, is they've made it very clear that if it wasn't completely clear before, that the player involved does not get a vote. Also, the player involved cannot state their case. But it's not a small hearing where the player in question gets to plead their case on whether they believe a rule says this or that, which would then make them in or out, or whatever the case may be, in a large just gamut of things that could be the case. So now you've got the 3 people and you can't plead your case. So actually, if you plead your case about a rule to the rest of the card, you can then be given a courtesy warning, which if you know anything about the rules, courtesy warning, the next step after that is you'll be stroked. You'll be given a penalty stroke for, spirit of the game, amongst a number of other rules that can come into play here. So you have the vote going from what some people believe to possibly be all 4 players to only the 3 players not involved in the call. Then you have also the player involved in the call doesn't get to plead their case because there's a risk of a courtesy warning. The other issue that could possibly lead to a stalemate and a vote is that a player could say, I didn't see where XYZ happened, right? So if you don't know, it is your responsibility as a card mate of the entire card at a competitive event sanctioned by the PDGA to watch all players' throws at all times for this specific purpose, so that you can help make a ruling in the event that it's needed. So In the past, players were able to say, I didn't see what happened, so I can't rightfully make a call, which, totally understandable. But now you don't get to say that. If you weren't watching or didn't see what happened and you use that as your reason for not making the call, you can be given a courtesy warning for not watching everyone's throws. So if some people, not everyone, but some players were using that to their advantage, where they'd be like, I didn't see what happened, I'm out, you guys have to figure this out on your own. So that's no longer in reality either. You can no longer just opt out of the vote because you say you didn't see it, or whatever comes to fruition from that. So in the event that that happens and that player is then given a courtesy warning, there only becomes two people involved in the vote, right? Now it's this person versus this person. If that comes to a tie, then and only then, if I'm reading this correctly, the player involved in the situation whose throw is in question then can vote to help come the final outcome. So pretty interesting stuff. These are, the wording on this stuff. I would hate to be somebody that is in charge of making rules. This has got to be one of the hardest jobs for the PDGA, is coming up with competitive guidelines that are fair and also easy to read and understandable for everyone, because everyone's got their own interpretation. So I do like that they got rid of some of the wording. They eliminated some of the opportunities for a mistake or a misunderstanding, and they replaced that with some things that I think are designed to encourage people to always be watching, always be ready to state your case on why you think a thing happened to another player or not. But it also is very clear on the fact that, again, the player in question doesn't have a vote unless you get to that special circumstance. And number two, they don't get to plead their case. So I think the main thing in the wrap up of this particular rule discussion is, one, always be watching. There is no benefit to the player. That doesn't exist. And three, you don't get to opt out of a vote on a call for a hole because you just didn't see what happened. So let me know in the comments what you guys think about this. And if you think that I'm misinterpreting something wrong or reading something wrong, or if you read it differently, I am open for all discussions. As always, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Click those buttons, do those things. Quick shout out to the homies at Guardian Aliens, Jared and friends. This one was done by Noel. I've got some of the other artists' artwork in my home as well, but I just wanted to do something to kind of spruce up the background for the videos, and what better thing to have than some of my homies' this isn't original artwork, these are on tapestries. But yeah, love those guys. Big shout out. New year, hopefully some new things coming. This podcast could be one of those things. So if you guys want to support that, we appreciate that in any way, shape, or form. It's really easy to do and completely free. All you got to do is like and subscribe, share our stuff, jump in the comments section, help get that thing going. So nothing but peace, love, and hair grease. See you guys later.